We are diving into back button focusing on Fujifilm cameras. Hi everyone, welcome to Pal to Tech. So what exactly is back button focusing? It's when you remove the focusing from the shutter button and you instead assign it to a different button, usually on the back of the camera. So why would you want to consider using back button focus to begin with? As you may already know, normally when you put your autofocus mode in AFS, you can aim your camera at the subject and then half press down the shutter release button to lock focus. And for the most part, that works fairly well. But now let's take a look at using continual autofocus. Often in low light situations, your AFC will hunt around and sometimes miss the subject. And it can get worse if the subject is moving or if you've got leaves or foliage in front of it that are waving around, say in the wind. And that's because as soon as you go to press down on the shutter release button, the camera will again autofocus, and that could result in sort of a last-minute autofocus of the wrong area of your scene. So back button focusing is basically a way for you to have more control over your camera's overall autofocusing decisions. For example, here's a fast-moving subject taken in low light with a 90mm prime lens. The camera didn't have to keep trying to acquire focus. There are two ways to set up back button focusing on Fujifilm cameras: the traditional way and the MF way. Let's start with the traditional way. The first thing you want to do is go into your menu, into the little wrench area, button dial setting, and go into where it says Shutter AF. And it's right here where you can turn on or off the ability for your shutter release button to autofocus right before it takes the shot. For the purposes of this demo, we're going to go ahead and turn it off for AFC. However, keep in mind that you could turn it off for either one or both. Once you've done that, I also recommend going into pre-autofocus and turning that off as well. You don't absolutely have to do that, but I find that it does help. So what we've done just now is disabled the ability for the camera to autofocus when you have it set to AFC and you go to press down the shutter release button. The next thing you're going to want to do is pick a button that you want to assign to your back button focus. Now this can also depend on what model of Fujifilm camera that you have. For this demo, I'm going to show you on the X-T5. Now on some Fujifilm cameras, you'll notice that you already have a button that controls autofocus. For example, on the X-T5, it's the AF on button. And on the X-T3, it's located right here. The important thing to remember here is to assign it to whatever button is easiest ergonomically for you to use so that you don't miss hitting it when you're taking your shot. Press and hold down DISP back. Once you're in the menu right here, go ahead and locate the button that you want to assign back button focus to. And you want to select AF on. Now that back button focusing has been enabled, check this out. If I go ahead and half press down the shutter release button, say right here, nothing happens. You see that? Which is what I want, because the camera may accidentally focus on the foliage in front of Yoda. You see that right there? Instead, I'm going to use the back button focus, acquire focus on my subject just like this. And while I'm holding that down, I don't have to worry about when I press the shutter release button again. If something were to move last minute in front of the subject, or just for any reason at all, and I go to half press down the shutter release button, the camera is not going to refocus. It doesn't matter because the subject will remain locked on that initial position even when I press down the shutter release button. And that reminds me of another reason why back button focus is so great: less wasted images. Remember that every time you're half pressing down the shutter release button, sometimes you can slip and accidentally take the shot. Now let's talk about the second way of setting back button focus on your Fujifilm camera, something I call the MF method. Go into your button dial setting and put everything back to how it was. In other words, make sure that both of these are set to on. Basically the default way the camera was set up. Next, I would recommend going into AF MF and make sure that AF plus MF is set to on. And I would put MF assist to peak highlight. I usually choose red, but you can choose any color you want. And finally, make sure that you have a button selected for your back button focus. Again, you press and hold down the DISP back button, and then pick one of the buttons on the back of the camera and go ahead and assign it AF on. Now, all you have to do is put your camera into manual focus mode. And when you want to acquire focus, simply press your back button focus like this. And what's so great about this is that you also get the benefits of focus peak highlighting to show you exactly what's in focus. But wait, there's more. Not only that, but you can rotate the focus ring as well to make any last-minute fine-tune adjustments. You also might want to consider setting your rear command dial as your back button focus. That way, when you press in on the rear command dial, it will act as a back button focus for your camera. So with this method, you're actually getting the best of a few worlds. First, you're shooting with manual focus, so you get the benefits of using focus peaking, as well as the ability to fine-tune your focus by using the focus ring on the lens. Another benefit is that you still have AFS and AFC operating normally. In other words, you don't want back button focusing? No problem. Just switch back by switching your focus mode, and everything on the camera will be back to normal. And that comes in handy if you happen to have to hand your camera to someone that doesn't know a lot about photography to take a photo of you, say you're out traveling. Just put the camera into AFS or AFC, and then you do not need to worry about teaching them about how back button focusing works. Now, what about shooting video on your camera? Is there a back button focus option for that? Yes, sort of. When you have the camera in movie mode, you most often put the camera into AFC mode, and you use your AFC custom setting and AF mode settings to control it. I've got an entire video on how to set these up, but regarding back button focusing, here's an option you can try. First thing you need to know is that in movie mode, your camera will completely ignore the settings you have for shutter AF, so you don't need to worry about changing those settings. What you want to do is put your camera into AFS. This will not work in AFC, nor will it work in AFM, only in AFS. And just like with stills, make sure that you've assigned a button on the back of your camera to AF mode. So I'm going to go ahead and start filming. And I can use my back button focus just like this. Boom. I'll go ahead and lock focus. And now as I move the camera around, the focus remains on my subject. I can change my focus by pressing the back button again. Look at that. Moving the camera. No change. It essentially locks focus, which is wonderful. However, if I press and hold down the back button focus, it will continuously try and lock focus onto whatever the subject is. For example, I'll press and hold it down right now, lock focus. While I'm moving the camera, I'm still holding down the back button focus, and it is reacquiring focus. You see that? Now there's something for you to be aware of, and that is if you have it set to face eye auto detect or subject detection. If either one of those is set, then the camera is going to continuously try and acquire autofocus, even if you have focus mode set to AFS. But there's an interesting little technique you can try with this. Instead of setting your back button focus to AF on, set it instead to AF lock only, just like that. Now watch what happens when I shoot video. The camera is obviously hunting for the correct subject. In this case, I want it to be Yoda and not Thanos, okay? So I'm gonna press down the back button that I've assigned, boom, and lock focus on Yoda. Now that does not change. It freezes it, you see that? And if I let go of the button, the camera tries to acquire a face again. Once it does, I can press down and lock that. And then I could move it all around and it will not change that area of focus. Obviously, this may not be useful for everyone, but it was a tip that I thought I'd share with you. Speaking, by the way, of AFC versus AFS when shooting video, I will be publishing a tutorial showing the differences and how to use each. Look for that coming on the channel soon. Before we continue, I must announce to you that we have not one, but two new Geariguana members on the channel. The first is Steve Connors, and the second member, Tostin Troutwine. Both of these members are going to have their names added to the studio wall right now. Well, there you go. You're a permanent part of the studio, just out of frame, but here forevermore as part of the studio. Thank you both so much for your contribution. And for the rest of you, if you have not yet checked out Pal2Tech Backstage, What are you waiting for? And a huge thank you to all of you who have supported the channel and have been a part of this community. You inspire me every day. So if you've never tried out back button focusing before, I would try out the MF method and see how that works for you. As always, if you have any back button focusing tips that you'd like to share with your fellow Fujifilm users, be sure to put them in the comments down below this video. And I would like to thank Andre from Montreal, Canada for suggesting today's video idea. And if you've got any topics you'd like to see covered on this channel, feel free to let me know. Well, thank you so much for watching, and I hope you found the video helpful or at least entertaining. And if you did, be sure to give it the like and subscribe. I'm going to be signing off now, but have a wonderful weekend, and I will see you in a new video next week. Take care.